You give the right answer. Everyone nods. And somewhere in your chest, a small voice says that wasn't good enough. You should have explained it better. You should have known this already. Here's the strange part. The smarter you get, the louder that voice becomes. Not because you're falling behind, because your brain just got a clearer view of everything you still don't know. That feeling isn't proof you're not smart enough. It's proof your brain is doing exactly what a smart brain is built to do. In the next few minutes, you're going to find out why the smartest people you know secretly feel like frauds, and why that feeling means something completely different than you think. Let's start with a study that changes everything. Back in 1999, a psychologist named David Dunning, along with his student Dunning-Kruger, ran an experiment at Cornell. They gave people a test on grammar, logic, and humor, then asked each person to guess how well they did. The people who scored the worst guessed they were above average, way above. But the people who scored near the top guessed they did worse than almost everyone else in the room. Sit with that for a second. The least competent people felt the most confident. The most competent people felt the least sure of themselves. Why would that happen? Because skill and self-awareness grow together. When you barely know a topic, you don't have the tools to spot your own mistakes. You don't know what you don't know, so nothing feels wrong. But the moment you actually learn a subject, you start seeing all the nuance, all the exceptions, all the ways you could still be off. Your brain isn't getting dumber, it's getting a better map. And the better the map, the more blank space you suddenly notice on it. This isn't just a lab result. Ask any surgeon, any coder, any teacher with 15 years behind them, and you'll hear some version of the same thing. I still feel like I'm figuring this out. That's not modesty. That's a brain with enough information to know how much information exists. Now, here's where it gets personal. In 1978, two psychologists, Pauline Clance and Suzanne Imes, studied a group of highly accomplished women, professors, doctors, executives, people with real credentials sitting right there on paper. Almost every one of them privately believed they had somehow fooled everyone into thinking they were capable. Clance and Imes called it the imposter phenomenon. You probably know it by its more common name, imposter syndrome. Here's the twist most people miss. Imposter syndrome doesn't show up because you're actually a fraud. It shows up because your brain is comparing your messy, behind-the-scenes process against everyone else's polished final result. The drafts nobody sees, the doubts you never post, the Googling of things you feel like you should already know. You're grading your rough draft against their highlight reel. Of course, it feels unfair. It was never a fair comparison to begin with. So picture this happening inside your own head, right now, today. You're in a meeting. Someone asks a question you technically know the answer to. For half a second, your mind goes blank, your throat tightens, and a thought flashes through. What if they realize I don't actually know what I'm doing? That flash isn't a malfunction. It's your brain's honesty circuit firing correctly, because it has just enough self-awareness to know that certainty is rarely earned and mostly performed. Here's the counterintuitive part. Confidence and competence don't move together in a straight line. They move in a curve. Confidence spikes early, back when you know almost nothing about a subject. Then it crashes hard the moment you learn enough to see the whole scale of what you're dealing with. And then, slowly, painfully, it climbs back up. Not because you stop noticing the gaps, because you learn to work comfortably alongside them. Psychologist Carol Dweck's research on mindset backs this up from a different angle. People who treat ability as something that grows rather than something you either have or don't. Move through that dip fastest. They read the doubt as information instead of a verdict. They don't ask, "Am I smart enough?" They ask, "What am I still missing?" One question shuts you down. The other keeps you moving. So the feeling you've been carrying, that low hum of not enough, not sure, still guessing, was never evidence against you. It was a receipt. Proof that you've learned enough to see past the surface. The lowest scores in that Cornell study never felt this. They couldn't. You can only doubt yourself this precisely once you actually understand the thing you're doubting yourself about. Here's what to do with that today. The next time that voice shows up, right before you speak, right before you hit send, right before you walk into the room, don't treat it as a verdict on your ability. Treat it as data. It's telling you that you care enough to see the gaps, and that you know enough to notice them in the first place. Say the thing anyway. Send it anyway. Walk in anyway. You give the right answer. Everyone nods. And this time, when that small voice speaks up, you recognize it for what it actually is. Not proof you don't belong there. Proof you finally understand enough to know how much more there is to learn.